It's Harry Cleon Quear. I go by Cleon when I got out of a staff sergeant. But in 1944, my brother and I, he was 17, we got in what was now National Guard, but it was State Guard. And so we got training at Camp Atterbury, Indiana, but we still had to stay in school. So when I got tired of infantry, I got tired of marching. So in 1946, I decided I was going to go to the Air Force. So I joined the Air Force, and from there I went bypassed basic training because of the training I'd gotten in 44 and 45. Well, after that, I'm 19, I'm not even 19 yet, and I'm sitting overseas. I spent 24 months there, went to school, and I worked, well, ended up being the assistant shop for welders. Then I went to A&E school, and when I got out in 49, they had started, matter of fact, when I got on board ship at Tokyo, I guess Yokohama, and that people had been coming down from Korea, and they looked at us and they said, "You're coming back, you'll be coming back." And sure enough, we came back. So in 1950, I had joined a troop carrier squadron, and in 1950, they activated the whole squadron. Well, we were at Camp Atterbury, Indiana, of all things. It was Atterbury Air Base, and it was not too far away from Camp Atterbury that we trained in 1944. And I can remember hearing all the engines running up on Atterbury Air Base. But anyway, they took some of us and sent us to Europe because of the A&E mechanics. We shipped us down to Lawson Air Force Base in Georgia. Then we did TDY and back over to Tokyo, or Yokota, is where I was before. In the meantime, I'd gone to school and learned to be a radio operator. So when we got into Korea, when somebody said it was cold, they weren't kidding. I mean, you've never tried to start a cold engine. I don't care, you can pump all kinds of air into that thing and it's going to take a long time. But I think what got to me was back when I was in Japan, we used to go to Kamakura, and it always fascinated me that we could go down to a long row and there's all these gods that those people had. But down at the end, there was a one known statue. It was to the unknown God. And so it was our job to tell him, "Hey, I know who that is." And we'd tell him. But you'd go over there then, and if you tell them that you were from the United States, they did not understand it. But if you told them, "Oh, I'm from America," "Ah, America." They didn't know about the United States. It always fascinated me. We showed them pictures of like a factory, and here's all these automobiles, and say, one person owns each one. No way. I have flown all over Japan, and the thing that fascinated me was you catch the sun right, and you look down, and it's like the reflections here, that light, and they're reflecting off the rice paddies. It looks like a piece of glass that had just been sunk in to the side of the mountain. Been over Mount Fuji. So I decided to be saved or be brave, and so I went on a mission when I was in Korea. I haven't told very many people this, but they forgot to tell me that there was 8 .30 caliber guns in the nose of it. It was a B-26. Now it travels at 265 miles an hour. When you're 50 feet off the ground and they fired all 8 guns, no way. Now, I don't know, I wasn't scared until later, but it was just fascinating how that airplane, they reacted. And I keep telling everybody, if you could ever find that airplane again, that one spar is going to be bent forward because that's where my foot was. And that was my only term for action. The other part was when we were out in the field, you'd ever try to take a bath in a helmet, a helmet liner. It just doesn't work. And to top that off, they had a typhoon come in on us, and so one of our bombers had taken off, and he didn't make it, so he went down a hill. So what happened was, being a welder at the time, they brought it up and we cut that thing apart. Well, they bent the crane, so we welded that back together. Then they decided they were going to cut the nacelles up, because in Japan, when they say their tunnels are narrow, they're not kidding. So while they were cutting one of them apart, things got warm, and didn't cut into it. We were cutting in where area, but the anti-icer fluid had fallen down and soaked my field jacket and everything. And so when it got really warm, and I've got goggles, I don't know all this, and some lieutenant grabs me, I'm down to my skivvies, and so fast you can't see it. Didn't burn him, didn't burn me, but now that scared me. That's what's getting hot over my job, I guess. Anyway, but when I got out of us, what I got from the experience is I grew up. Because I was 16 when I started, and I was 21, 22 when I got out. I got out in December of 1952. I took advantage and took a correspondence course to be a tool die designer. Then I went to school at what they had, Purdue. I'm from Indiana. They had Purdue, IU, Cantwell in downtown Indianapolis. So I got my associate degree in electrical and mechanical engineering. So when somebody asks me what my amount is, it's ooey pooey, IUPUI. But thanks to the government, my GI Bill, I've spent 27 years with Bell Telephone Laboratories. So I became a draftsman and a designer, and of all the equipment that you see here now, all that little stuff I used to, we call it stuff, that I traveled between Indianapolis and Allentown, and I'd take it back there in a box of cards, and when I brought it back, it was little wafers with all that integrated circuits on it. So it's been a good life. Okay, we had a bunch of characters, which I call them, but they had people. But they said you got to finish high school. So rather than have us come in, and now in '44, so evidently they knew something. They were getting pretty long in the war. But our headquarters was in Indianapolis, and then we had a battalion headquarters in Kokomo, Indiana. And so in weekends, they would send us down to Camp Atterbury. And so on weekends, we were down there, and here we got, as I said, a bunch of 16-year-old snot noses. And it took me all these years to realize that those guys are down there teaching us how to throw grenades. They taught us some jiu-jitsu and some of the other stuff. That those guys were teaching us were doing duty because they had goofed up someplace online. So they had the duty to teach those snot noses down there how to do all this. So we were, I guess that worked two ways. They were pulling duty because they goofed up, but they were down there teaching us. And so when in high school, if any was any marching done, I'm it. And so when I got down to basic training, they just bypassed me and put me in another flight. And it's been, but we marched. I 16 years old, they put a 30-06 in my hand and says, okay, that's yours. You keep it, you clean it, and that's all yours. We carried it, we fired it, and we were the honor guard or color guard for Memorial Day, and we traveled around the county, and we fired their rifles for that. I gotta tell you, the first time I did that, I fired, and when I put the bolt up and pulled the bolt back to bring the shell out, that shell went up in the air and came down and hit me my glasses, and it just, and I'll remember that. But no, I had fun. But my older brother went to the Navy. I'm to the Air Force. My little brother went to the Navy. Then my little brother became a Smiley. He went to the Marines. So you can see our family reunion was quite interesting. But I've enjoyed it. I grew up a lot, and I learned a lot.